So I have a sutta from the Anguttara Nikaya 1060 Girimananda Sutta. And it's about 10 perceptions that need to be developed. And the first one is, I'll just read that first section. What is the perception of anicca that needs to be developed? Here, a bhikkhu, having gone to the forest, to the root of a tree, an empty hut, reflects, meditates. Matter is anicca, feeling is anicca, perception is anicca, sankharas are anicca, consciousness is anicca. He lives as one who sees anicca in the right way in these 5 assumed aggregates. So the developing these perceptions is meditation.
Yes, that begins by going to an empty forest, an empty hut, physically removed from people.
And obviously
it's a prerequisite. Yeah. And prerequisite for succeeding in living alone like that is development in virtue, establishment in virtue, accomplishment in virtue, sense restraint and guarding of the sense doors, watchfulness and so on. So that's where the meditation begins, and that's with your virtue. Then the next step, when you are thoroughly established in your precepts and guarding of the sense doors, is that going to an empty forest, a hut, that's when these perceptions become clearer, when you're physically removed from company.
And can then be developed. Then you can start meditating, so to speak.
Exactly. This is prerequisite for jhana, prerequisite for any of these perceptions is physical removal from people, being alone, secluded in an empty forest, empty hut, dwelling away. That's not optional.
Secluded from unwholesome states. Secluded from
unwholesome states.
Company.
But physically you have to have been removed from company, from the possibility of company, from the immediate possibility of company. Like, I might be alone in the room, but if somebody is next door to me, they can come and knock at any given time, or I could hear them at any given time, or they could call me at any given time. So you're not really alone. That possibility is looming over. But when you're secluded in a way that the suttas describe it, it's like, okay, now you're secluded. Now you know that, at least until tomorrow when you get back to the village or something, there will be no people here. You are alone. So you use that certain current facticity of being secluded at the time to ponder on the phenomenon of that universal nature of being alone, the 5 aggregates, being there in the world on their own, empty of owner, empty of controller, empty of the master. And so you use that certain current basis of factual seclusion, this room is empty of others, as the Buddha says. So is these aggregates are empty of selves, or something like that, similar.
But just in terms of anicca, so being in seclusion, being withdrawn from unwholesome states, that perception becomes clearer. So you're not creating anicca.
No, not fabricating.
You're not fabricating. You're not imagining it.
You're expanding your mind in that peripheral sense, where you notice more and more until you notice, any of the aggregates sitting there on its own, peripherally, enduring, because of which you have this experience of being alone in the forest or an empty hut at the moment, and then the characteristics of that aggregate, or of the 5 aggregates, or of the experience as a whole, or of that body there, whichever is understood peripherally, will be seen as impersonal, unownable, given, existing on its own for what it is.
Right.
And that's all forms of anicca, seeing anicca.
So you're able then to see the nature of this experience.
Yeah.
So why is that nature of experience, that perception of anicca, not obvious to us, not obvious to everyone?
Well, because people's minds are not developed peripherally enough. They don't have enough context in regard to their own situation. Because they're too absorbed with the pull of sensuality, with the avoidance of pain, with the gratuitous perpetuation of ownership. So clouding the perspective, or just, as the Buddha would compare, like, living immersed in a swamp and water. So for as long as the lifestyle and livelihood doesn't change, whereby it stops perpetuating these gratuitous assumptions, you can't see then what you would see if you don't have those assumptions. So that's why, like said many times, the practice of the Dhamma is not something you can do on top of your life, like whatever. The practice of Dhamma means restructuring your life so it matches the principles of nature of the five aggregates before it's too late. And the importance for matching those principles is so that you can develop dispassion and remove the gratuitous ownership of those very same aggregates. So it's not some like a revelation you can get on top of your currently sort of ordinary life, and then you just suddenly see this. No. You need to start undoing everything else that's covering it up.
Right. Because you can
removing the cover-ups, and the entire life, the entire human life, is one massive cover-up of non-ownership, of anicca, of fear, of anxiety, of death, and everything else. It's a giant cover-up.
Even if you
that's why people are addicted and passionately dependent upon that life, because if they look, what the alternative is, it's frightening. It says, oh, what if I'm not in control? What if being subject to death is something that it's going to be experienced individually, internally, and it's going to be very unpleasant, because everything that is dear to me and that I depend upon will cease, will be taken away.
Yeah, I don't want to know that.
So yeah, exactly. So it's too much to deal with. So it's better for me to basically not acknowledge it and not want to know about it. Yeah.
Enjoy life.
Well, and then you might not necessarily I'll enjoy life, but by choosing to ignore this, then you're already choosing the direction of trying to enjoy life and pretend there is no problem underneath.
So that you can understand it intellectually, anicca. You can get the dictionary definition, and you can understand it on that level of information. But if you don't change your life, you'll never actually see it or discern it.
No.
The actual nature.
No, that's why the physical actions need to be purified, the livelihood needs to be purified, the whole speech needs to be purified, the habits need to be purified, abandoned, whatever else. And then all these things you read in the suttas, you'll have a basis to see them within your experience. Without it, it's just an abstract theory, and on the level of belief, faith, and religion, basically something you take on as a form of identity, not something you're actually internally cultivating.
Yeah. And in terms of translation, so anicca, usually translated as impermanence, and it gives that sense of just it won't be around for very long. It will change eventually. But it's not deep enough.
It's not deep enough because it's the term impermanence is kind of, or at least it has become too impersonal. So when you say impermanence, you think it's any random impermanence of any random thing. That's what anicca is, but it's not. Nicca, remember that we found that in original Sanskrit, nitya means dear, personal, intimate. So the whole nicca, the whole sense of permanence, durability, is bound with that intimacy. It's bound with that ownership, with that which is dear to you. So anicca should be seen on that level. So that's why I'm saying, if you want to practically see anicca, you need to find things that are dear to you, things that you would not remain sort of indifferent if they change, those things, if they go away or if they change, and then contemplate them going away and changing. To see how much emotionally you're dependent on that, and how much you're refusing to accept the reality that they are subject to change. They are subject to anicca. That's it. So that's why translating it as impermanence, it's fine if you explain where that impermanence is found. But if if it's just impermanence of everything and nothing, that's not anicca at all, because it's not personal enough.
I also like the translation of circumstantial.
Well, again, even that, like whichever translation you choose, I think you would have to explain it really, yeah. Because circumstantial people can then could possibly interpret as, oh, this is circumstantial, thus it's on my control, thus it's on my responsibility, thus I can dismiss it.
Mm-hmm.
But your attachment is in your responsibility, is in your control, not directly, indirectly. It's because of the way you regard things, you are attached to them. So you are responsible for it. If you say, oh, I keep, I don't know, drinking cold water non-stop and having headaches as a result of it. So yes, you're not directly causing yourself headaches, but if you stop drinking the water that is very cold, your headaches will go away. So you are responsible for them indirectly. You're not drinking water to get headaches, but they are the result. So your attachment to things that are dear to you, yeah, you might want not to be attached, but you keep doing things that attachment is the result of. That's why I keep saying it's the symptoms of the problem. And the problem is basically you acting out of passion, aversion, and distraction, not taking responsibility on the level of choice, and certainly not having developed virtue sufficiently enough, which is like, a certain basis that would already start challenging your notion of, self and ownership and things that are dear to you, even just keeping the mere precepts.
If I think about the matter is anicca, matter or feeling is anicca.
Mm-hmm.
I would say matter is inaccessible.
Mm-hmm.
It's arisen circumstantially through elements and things that I have no access to.
Yeah, but again, whether that's done as an explanation or is that done as a description of what you're peripherally seeing correctly through mindfulness of the body, peripherally established. That's the difference, pretty much. Because if you're describing that body that you see, like right now while we speak, that body, that, the mouth that's speaking and the form behind, it's inaccessible, it exists there, and I'm using it to express these thoughts and so on. But if you're not aware of it peripherally, while we're speaking right here, right now, using this mouth and this form and so on, then it just becomes an explanation that then people can adopt. But it does not pertain to that which it should pertain. So in other words, it's just abstract. So that's why, rather than trying to figure out these abstractions, you want to understand anicca, take on the precepts, guard the sense doors, you'll see why later on, and then start challenging things that are dear to you. You don't need to destroy them or get rid of them, just contemplate their cessation, their destruction, their change, being taken away. And when the anxiety arises and fear, my health as well, yeah, sure. Not just people that are dear to you and other things and items. Your own body is a thing and item. Your health, your life, everything that depends on. And then when anxiety starts to come up and fear and doubt, that's where you're going to see the benefit of previously developed precepts, guarding of the sense doors and sense restraint. That will keep it together, in other words. The aggregate of virtue developed beforehand will be your container, because that sense of self is going to start to rebel and complain and scream and kick because you're dissolving it through challenging its ownership.
By developing that perception, by
contemplating it, by confining it within those perceptions.
And I think when you start to speak about anicca, you can't help but describe dukkha, anatta.
It's there, yeah.
It sounds like the same.
It's just different aspects of the same thing, the same phenomenon. Because seeing that unknowability and subject to change is felt unpleasantly. Simultaneously with the perception of anicca, it's a simultaneous dukkha. It's not a second thing that follows later. So it's the same facet. It's the facet that's there at the same time. And then the experience of that anicca dukkha cannot be mine, cannot be atta. So on the level of self-awareness of anicca and dukkha, it's anatta. You cannot own it, even if you want to. Even if your sense of self is still trying to assume the ownership and rebel, if you confine it within the perception of anicca and dukkha and endure it within anicca and dukkha, that sense of self is fading. It is disintegrating. It is wasting away because it's unsustainable in that environment.